All right, welcome back to the Fantasy Tippler, the worst fantasy football advice show on the planet. I'm your local drunk, Randall. We're going into a new format for 21 because 2020 taught us that that was a hot mess of a year, and we're going to start fresh like most of Americans. So new format, new year. We're going to be updating, website finally forthcoming and updating all that social media. So hopefully it's going to be a good year and more consistent. So let's go through a recap of what I went through in 2020. All right, so normally I was in 10 leagues. I really tried to expand my experience, and it was very helpful. However, one league right before the draft converted from doing a regular draft to a daily kind of DDF, weekly win thing. So, I won 3 weeks out of 16. I'm not even going to include that in my analysis. So, I had 9 actual total leagues that I was in. I made a playoff in 6. One of them, I would dead laugh, and I'll talk about that in another episode. I know exactly what I did wrong, and I did nothing to fix it because the other leagues were demanding too much of my attention, and it was like a $20 buy-in. So I drafted on tilt in that league, and we'll discuss that later. So made playoffs in 6 of them out of 9, won third in one of them, won second place in 2 of them. However, I would have won one of them, and I had it locked down. I was up by 35 points. The guy had one player left. And I bet there was a bunch of y'all that had the same experience. That one player on Monday night in week 16 was Stephon Diggs with 40 fucking points. So, I got second place in 2. And it was really disappointing because that was one of the leagues where I started off 0-5, and I had to really, really fight, make some trades, and come back and made it to the championship game. So that's what fantasy football is all about. So, all right. So let's kind of do a quick recap on the draft. What I've learned this year is what I did in the draft. There were a couple of things. And I did this all across the board in all 9 leagues. I kept waiting, trying to get the right guy in the right round. And I shouldn't have done that. And I missed out on a lot of really cool guys that I knew were going to pop. It didn't quite. It just kept like, oh, this guy would be available in the 9th. Oh, this guy would be available in the 9th. Well, he was gone in the 7th because most of the people I play with aren't fucking idiots. So they were ready to rock and roll, and they saw he was still there in the 7th, so they just went ahead and took him. Like, I really thought I was going to get Josh Allen in the 9th. Oh, no one. Like, I had him in 2 leagues, and I scrambled to take him in the 8th because everybody else was hot. At that point, no one else had taken quarterback. There was still a whole bunch available, and that was it. Most of the time, Josh Allen went into the 5th or 6th. So, got sniped on so many of my sleepers. So, don't try to find too much value. Try to find, pick about 2 or 3 guys that, you absolutely think are going to be rock stars. Then screw what everybody else says to you in the draft. Get those guys early. Another mistake I made. Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, which is something I planned to do in 3 leagues. I was able to do it in 2. And one of them, we made the playoff by just basically keeping Julio Jones and Michael Thomas on IR the entire time. We got lucky with some of the best waiver wire pickups I've ever seen, including James Robinson. Will Fuller did help us out in that league. And so that was a huge mistake. I did not realize they would both go that bad, but I was going to try the 0 RB, strategy, which worked for some people, didn't work for others. So, second thing, mistakes I made. I bashed Aaron Rodgers so hard last year. I didn't, he went undrafted in a lot of my leagues, or he went into very late double digits as QB2. But I had warned that the fact that they drafted Jordan Love, like he was going to come back and blow things up, come back with the vengeance, but I just wasn't willing to spend the draft capital on him, not with so many other great options out there, and avoided him in all the drafts, and obviously regretted it. He was just like a lead winner for fantasy football. So, yeah, I made a mistake of passing on Rodgers, even though I kind of called it that saying he was going to come back. Making a point to roster a handcuff, I got so into like I want to always keep one handcuff in there, at least one. And the only one, I had a list of like a bunch of people that had flex value where you could actually start them even though the starting running back was still in your lineup. For example, a great example is Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. That was pretty much the only handcuff anybody should have taken. All the other handcuffs were available on the waiver wire at any given time during the league. Now, what I ended up doing, like a moron, one of my leagues, and this is the one I came in last place, I picked up, got Dalvin Cook in the first round, but I picked up Alexander Mattison, Kareem Hunt, and Chase Edmonton, and I held on to him all season long. I should not have done that. I should have just, balanced my team out. So this year, now obviously I don't consider Kareem Hunt a handcuff. Not really, even though he came very fucking in handy. But, the handcuff thing, I've got to take a step away from that and just start picking them up, mid-season and stuff like that. Another thing I did was I advise against taking rookie wide receivers because they don't pop until halfway through the season. But I just couldn't help myself this year. And I got a Jalen Reagor in a bunch of them. I got Justin Jefferson in a bunch. And then I ended up putting Justin Jefferson on the waiver wire and then lost him. So really fucked up on rookie wide receivers. Need to stick to my plan with that next year. All right, but here are the good calls I made. So I said Miles Sanders was going to be a bust after drafting him in his rookie season. I didn't get what I wanted, and the Eagles just gave me a weird feeling. So for his draft capital, now sometimes he went the first, sometimes he went the second. He only had a good game, which is at least to me 12 points, 7 times out of the whole season, 7 out of 16. So that's not worth first 2 rounds. So I called it I avoided Miles Sanders everywhere. I didn't want to deal with him. And that saves me. That's what got me into the playoff because he really let a lot of people down. What was the other one? Devin Singletary with Zach Moss. I avoided Devin Singletary. Some people wasted a 6th round pick on him, a 5th round pick. He didn't do anything. So that was the bust I called. I'm glad I didn't do that. David Montgomery, I didn't think he was going to hit the ground running, but I had a strong feeling that by week 4 or 5 that he was just going to be a stud. Now, I was right about that. It took a little bit longer than I expected, but it was worth holding on to him in case he broke out. He was actually a pretty good flex for a couple of weeks before he became pretty much a persona starter. One of the things I did this year for the first time ever was I didn't draft, in any of the leagues, I didn't draft any defensive kickers. Unless there was one league we drafted the week of, then I just went ahead and grabbed last 2 rounds a kicker and a defense. And I streamed all my kickers and all my defense, and it was worth it. That was just because one league, I believe the last pick was, Josh Allen because he was still available. It was weird. Who else? And then there was another league where James Robinson was my last draft pick, and I ended up not even have to put him on the waiver wire. So drafting Kareem Hunt, that really saved me in 2 leagues. And he was just phenomenal for us. Now I know he did let some people down later in the season, but I love Kareem Hunt. He's been solid for me, and I'm a big Nick Chubb fan. I get chubby thinking about Chubb. So a lot of things I mentioned on one of my last podcasts last year was watch the waiver wire. You're not going to get the same quality of waiver wires past week 6, and it really dries up week 7, week 8. And I made sure that I followed my own advice on that. and I would on top of the waiver wires constantly, especially like week 5 to 7, because that's when you see the breakouts come in, or you see some consistency. And if they're on the waiver wires, stash them. And also, if you're looking at your bench and the guy hadn't produced yet, get rid of him. So after that, like I had my tight end set, I had my quarterback set. I didn't have to do any streamings after that because I kind of knew who they were. Defense, at that point, I started jumping defense, and that's a little tricky because it eats up too much bench space. Now, what I mean by jumping is like, say you got Cleveland Browns week 7, but you know, like LA Rams, who were really, really solid defense, we're going to be playing week 8. So you wouldn't have had, and they both were on the waiver wire, so you played Browns one week, and you already picked up the Rams, so you don't have to like chase them on the waiver wire for the next week, because you know they're going to be like a top 3 options the next week. It's a really good strategy. If you have, in one of my leagues, in order to make the waiver wire competitive, we only have 5 spots. If you don't have that many spots on your fantasy football team, I would not do that. But it worked out, it worked out well with in most of my leagues, where I just kind of like, why not? Because the rest of my team, I drafted so well in some leagues that I had the ability to do that. So yeah, those were the things that I did for kind of messed up, like just around the draft, avoiding stuff like that. So don't get too much on the hype train during the off season, although that's all we do and we love it. But yeah, can't wait till we start drafting again, and hopefully this coronavirus thing will be fucking over with by the time the football season rolls around. I did on a lot of my leagues where I'm commissioner, like I did give people a ton of IR spots, and that ended up being very, very helpful. That will change probably going back next year to like 1 or 2, how the previous standard was. So, yeah, New Year, this is going to be a short video. New Year's, more things to come. Yeah, hit that like button, make a comment. And if you want personal fantasy football advice, email me at thefantasytippler@gmail.com. Talk to y'all later. Cheers.